Now, ladies and gentlemen, I wonder if there can be any doubt at all in your mind about who the winner of the plaque is going to be for the British light entertainment script, the best script, the winner's plaque to the team of writers for Marty, to be received by Marty Feldman on their behalf.
Now, what made me do that? Sometimes I feel that I have an obligation to the camera. As soon as I'm aware of it observing me, I have to make where the fun is. It's a kind of neurosis, I think. This is where I started as a performer, in Margate. I wasn't a comic then. I worked in a fairground at Dreamland in a Red Indian fakir act. I'd no idea I was going to become a comic then. I've always worked on the basis of doing what seemed like a good idea at the time. It's a pragmatic attitude, I suppose. I've always been totally committed to now, but it's an ever-changing now. Even as I say this, it's changing. I'm becoming older. I'm becoming different. I don't have ambitions in the conventional sense of goals or objects in view. I'm not concerned with tomorrow or yesterday. And yet, somehow, doing this program has forced me to look back. And it's curious how a pattern emerges in spite of what seemed at the time to be random, impulsive acts and choices. When I was a child, I wanted to be a comedian. But it never occurred to me, not then, it didn't occur to me that you could make a career out of being a comic. Making people laugh was just something you did because you wanted the approval it brought you. Maybe because you just enjoyed it. Now, about 25 years later, I still feel the same. I'm a comic because I enjoy it. But with the pressure of having to be funny all the time, I find that I enjoy it less and less. Comedy performing, or for me anyway, is a kind of neurosis which I exploit. You plagiarize your inadequacies, your hang-ups, and you make comic capital out of them. Comedy, like sodomy, is an unnatural act. And after all, it's not normal to parade yourself in front of other people and invite them to laugh at you. All the comics I've met felt themselves to be somehow social freaks, at odds with their environment because of their background or maybe the way they looked. Dudley Moore felt that when he was a child, he had many of the same hang-ups.
It was a defence mechanism that I resorted to at school, I think. Not finding myself particularly popular with my contemporaries, because I used to enjoy working rather hard, which didn't seem typical of a great many people. I don't know, maybe I was a bit out of focus in those days when it came to seeing myself in terms of, you know, other children. But anyway, I turned to making them laugh because it seemed the best way to cope with their aggression, which possibly I invited. Yeah. But I used to start fooling about, and I found it was a very good means of keeping in with them, you know, and not getting my trousers pulled down on the school playing field every lunchtime, you know.
Well, even if you do get bullied, you can sort of get out of the situation with dignity if you can turn it into a comic thing.
Exactly, yeah. It was a great release. I remember the very first time I started fooling about. I suddenly thought, oh, I've had enough of this, you know. I remember calling out something in an English lesson given by Mr. Day, I believe his name was, and it got a sort of little titter, and I thought, oh, this is it. This is the way to cope with it all, you know. Yeah. And from then on, I got interested in acting and in fooling about, and I just sort of drifted into it. And same at Oxford, I drifted into doing cabaret and revue and that sort of thing. Again, as a sort of a defence thing. I didn't really enjoy Oxford. Sorry about that up there, but I didn't really enjoy it for the first couple of years because I felt so out of place there, you know. Everybody was frightfully smooth, you know. And I felt like an absolute thing out of place. And one turned to the comic thing as a sort of subterfuge.
So, as a child, it starts as a kind of defence mechanism, in your case and in mine. Later on, I found that it was also very useful for pulling birds.
Yes.
You know,
yeah.
I think Oscar Wilde said that men fall in love with their eyes and women with their ears.
Yeah.
And I found that if I couldn't pull birds because of what I looked like, I could maybe make them laugh.
Yes.
That would attract them.
Yes.
You know?
You know, I'm getting more and more conscious of the processes that have brought me to becoming a comedian, and I'm, in a sense, becoming rather less humourful, or rather more humourless, as I see the things that I'm trying to disguise with humour.
Yeah.
And I'm, in a sense, trying to confront them now, rather than actually put them off by laughing at them.
For me, anyway, writing or performing comedy is an intuitive thing. The more you rationalise, the less you can do it. And the older you get, the more you rationalise. And that's something I'm trying to resist. You see, children, I think, are more hip than adults. They react instinctively to what they find funny. They don't read the reviews first. Picasso said it took him 70 years to learn to draw like a child. I don't think he meant childishly. I think he meant in a childlike way with a child's fresh vision. In a way, that's what I try to do as a comic, to see things as children do.
Please help! My mother was right. No, I never should have married you. No, I'm going home to my mother. No. It's the way to do it.
You see, I think adults worry too much about the effect of violence in entertainment. I believe children can distinguish fantasy from reality better than their parents.
You enjoyed it? Yes. You're like, what did you find funny about it? What?
I like the bit when they kept on smacking him.
You like the bit with the crocodile bit in, yes?
And
Yes.
he threw the baby down the stairs.
Yeah. And you?
I like when the punch kept smacking them with the stick.
Most of the things you liked were about when they were hitting each other, weren't they?
Yeah.
If a real person gets hurt, that isn't funny, you wouldn't laugh. If a man fell over and broke his arm, you wouldn't find that funny, would you?
No.
Ah. But if I fell over on television, because you know I'm only kidding, you'd laugh, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons that what I do has been successful is that it's involved with the current mood of nostalgia for childhood. Fairgrounds are back, the 40s are back, Mickey Mouse watches are trendy, and comic strips too. Amusement arcades are springing up all over London, and I feel myself in some way involved in this sort of Andy Warhol, David Hockney type pop culture.
Ever since I was a young boy, I played the silver ball. From Soho down to Brighton, I must have played them all. But I ain't seen nothing like him in any amusement hall. That deaf, dumb, and blind kid sure plays a mean pinball.
We live nowadays in a kind of Marshall McLuhan plastic throwaway disposable world. Well, that's okay. Most of the things that we make nowadays aren't really built to last. We build them for now. That's good. In many ways, it's very exciting. But I think it's unfortunate that we should neglect what has been. I mean, we're somehow ashamed, in a way, of making things that are made to last. I don't know why. We should, I think, preserve the best of what has happened. And it's like Bernard Shaw said, because you admire the baby, there's no reason to go upstairs and strangle the mother. And in my case, the mother was music hall. That's where I started. That's where I learned the rudiments of the trade of comedy. I think it is a trade. I toured for them 2 or 3 years in a musical specialty act on a show called Saucy Girls of 1952 and 53. I think I learned a little bit about audiences then. I certainly got the taste for entertainment then, for performing. This is Wilton's Music Hall. It was last used about 100 years ago. This would have been a great room to work. You could actually you could feel some sense of contact with an audience here. You could almost reach out and touch them. That's a thing that's sort of lacking in television. You miss that in TV. You're working to a camera. There is a need for this. Artists have a need to contact the audience, and the audience have a need to contact the artist. Music hall was created by people for people. It was the people who performed it were the same people who sat and watched the performances, you know. Most of the week they worked, and then they got up and they sang in the evenings, or they performed. They created it themselves. And oddly enough, although I was born out of that age, I was born in an age of radio and television and cinema, I felt myself to be very much part of the tradition of music hall. And I know it has a tremendous influence on the work I do, and I care very much about it. I care very much about the people. I care much about the performers. I care about the buildings, oddly enough, too. What we actually need is some kind of... Not to keep it going just because it's old, you know, although old things are nice, they have sort of connotations, but because I think it fills a need. That's the end of the sermon. Into the song and off. Hey!
There aren't any real music halls left in England. Music hall didn't die, it committed suicide. The shows were lousy, the presentation was pretty tatty. Although some of the performers may now appear in civic theatres, the great ones are just as valid today. Talent survives. It always will.
The one and only Sandy Powell with his assistant, Hay White.
Thank you kindly, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, and I hope... Are you enjoying yourselves? Yes! Splendid. Well, I hope I don't put a stop to it, that's all. Because I know what you're all thinking. I know you're sitting there nudging each other, and you're saying to yourself, I wonder how old he is.
With comics, they rarely are funny when they're young. You have to be not middle-aged, but you have to be 29, 30, 31. You have to get started before it really starts to happen. You have to be mature before it really starts to come.
Well, it seems like it, but of course I've been at it so long that, well, I've never known anything else. I hadn't even time to go to school.
As a writer, I very often get people coming to me saying, would you write me an act? And I always have to say the same thing, is that you can't write an act. An act is something you build.
Yes.
A solo act, certainly.
Yes.
You know, it builds over the years. You can't sit down and work it out. You can work out a few jokes, sure, and a routine, but an act, it's not the same as an act. The sort of comedy that happens in television, it seems to me, is more like comic strip comedy. It's superficial, because it doesn't have time to have the sort of... There's so many layers in your work, for instance, of so much subtlety.
Yes,
it's the subtlety you don't get in television.
Yes, that's true. You know, it's funny you're talking about building up an act, because it may be interesting to you to know how this ventriloquist thing of mine, you know, this burlesque ventriloquist, I was running my own show, and for 5 weeks, my agent had booked a ventriloquist on the bill. You know, your second term's got to be punchy, you know, a good, bashy comic.
Let's wake the audience up. Yeah.
And he sent me, for 5 weeks running, the worst ventriloquist I've ever heard in my life, you see. And I thought, how can I get my own back, you see, on these fellas? They were shocking. So I bought this doll. I think I paid £3 for it, you see, and put it in as a gag to follow the real vents. And they were nearly as bad as me at it, you see. And that started as a 2-minute gag. And I gradually put bits in and found bits of business until it developed. Now tell me, son, where do you live and where were you born? I was born in
Where was he born?
Wolverhampton. It's my own fault. I should have said Leeds in the first place. the finest blade in the world. The Wilkinson. Oh! It's true, it's true. Now, tell me, when your father had been robbed well, I don't need that anyway.
One of the most important things in my life is music. I worked briefly as a jazz musician in my middle teens. I used to hang about in Archer Street on Monday afternoons looking for work. This is where I first met Johnny Spate. He wasn't a writer then, he was a drummer. I was a trumpet player. According to one well-known critic, the worst in the world.
John, I've always thought there was a connection between jazz and comedy. Like a lot of comics I know, most comics I know started off playing an instrument of one kind or another. Most writers I know were interested in jazz or played it. Do you think there's a connection?
Yeah, I think in writing even as well. I think it's timing, isn't it? Comics time,
yeah.
rhythm. There's a rhythm in writing,
Absolutely.
in a dialogue, and in a sentence, like for a character to speak, it's got its own rhythm, you know.
That's right, it has. And it's true of directing, it's true of performing.
Yeah,
it's true,
yeah.
Very true of comedy, which is largely a thing you play off an audience, you improvise, you know.
You do, yeah.
It's a similar feeling to jazz. I don't know, a lot of comics I've talked to would like to have been musicians, even the ones who didn't actually play, had a feling for jazz early on.
Yeah.
And then most of them were
there must
drummers.
have obviously a sense of rhythm anyway, because you've got to say that if to write or to deliver a line, it's timing. As you know, a comic line is really on a knife edge at time, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an instinctive thing, it's an intuitive thing.
Yeah.
And also, there's a certain kind of comedy that musicians are attracted to. It's a kind of humour, it's a kind of surrealism that you find in jazz too.
If Jon Hendricks hadn't been a jazz singer, he probably would have been a comedian. There's something about the excitement of improvisation in jazz, which is very like the feeling you get when you're inventing comedy spontaneously. A feeling of what is happening now, of creating a mood, an atmosphere, ideally in collaboration with other people, as Jon Hendricks does with Annie Ross.
Got another kind of jive, lot jumping. I'm really very much alive today. It's something down to jumping at the woodside now, lot jumping. You cop a room with telephone, lot jumping. You tell the fella you're alone, lot jumping. And you're no longer on your own, say something down to jumping at the woodside now, lot jumping. You think you're doing you a right, lot jumping. Got another kind of jive, lot jumping. I'm really very much alive today. It's something down to jumping at the woodside now. Hey! We're singing, swinging, jumping with that big easy band.
My own reaction to what you do is to, a lot of time, is to laugh.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's not a laugh like you laugh at a joke, but you laugh because you feel good inside.
It's happy.
It's happy feeling, yeah. Which is not specifically the kind of comedy I do, but it's part of it. There's a feeling that you get to, in jazz, there's a thing that happened when you're doing Jumping at the Woodside. You build up tension and then a release.
Yeah.
And then again, it makes you...
Yeah,
no,
sure.
A laugh is like that, isn't it? A feed line and a
That's
tag,
right.
you know? I mean, it's not an accident that you both worked at comedy, and you were in Cranks, of course.
Well, I think comedy is very much like singing in the sense that you have a rapport with somebody that you're singing with or the musicians that are playing for you.
Yeah.
I think it's the same in comedy. I mean, there's that, it swings between, you know.
Yeah. But there is a link. I mean, you, Annie, although you're thought of principally as a jazz singer, you have pretty firm grounding in show business, don't you? Films.
Yes, well,
music
my whole
hall.
family is in it, was in it.
Yeah.
And my first memory is, you know, doing comedy with my mother and father in a park in Ireland. And we had to work in concert parks because the kids in the family, of which there were 5 of us, were too small to really work on stage.
Yeah.
So I remember coming up and pretending I was lost.
Yeah.
And a policeman saying, you know, where's your mother and father? And me saying, I don't know. And then he had this big currant bun that he was eating, and I would say, I'm hungry. And he'd say, well, and I'd say, well, yes, I bite your currant bun. And he'd say, well, what are you going to do if I do? Will you sing? And I'd say, aye, I can sing. And then I'd go into my number, and that was the way I was worked in.
How old were you then?
About 4.5.
So what'd you do before that?
Well, I was retired.
Blue Bottle in East Finchley's greatest authority on reconditioned bloomers.
At this time of night, why aren't you at school?
I've been playing truant.
Playing again.
Hey! Now I shall play the Yale Moonlight game.
You get a clout on that with a fanlight game.
Don't you be a fool, my good mind.
Professionally, I've always considered myself as the child of a union between Take It From Here and the Goons. As a kid, I always felt that the Goons were doing the show for their own enjoyment. And I can't think of a better reason for doing the show, really.
Never had so much fun in my life as I had when we made those shows. In any movie or in any play or in any show.
But it sounded like fun. You see, I don't know, but I figure unless it's fun to do, it's not going to be fun to watch or listen.
It was a great, great thrill after, say, spending a week in some godforsaken hole dying to come back and have a ball on a Sunday. It was marvellous.
Because you knew each other, there was a kind of empathy there.
Like Spike playing Moriarty and me playing Grip Pipeston and Eddie playing it. We all used to have this thing going, or there would be two, Min and Hen, or Blue Bottle and Eccles. They both knew each other.
But you'd sense each other's responses, and you'd build it together.
The interesting thing about that, too, was that Eccles and Blue Bottle, or Min and Hen, they all had their own separate reactions to each other as entities.
There's this other thing that the Goons are accused of breaking new ground. There's an awful thing that comics get accused of doing, but you're not aware of doing it when you're doing it, are you?
No, of course not. No, I don't think anyone is.
Yeah, sort of read reviews and you say, my God, this is a breakthrough or something, but you don't set out and say, let's do a breakthrough this week. You know, looking back retrospectively, you have done something new maybe, but at the time it just seemed like a good idea to do what you did.
Yes, and you just did it because it gave you enjoyment and you fulfilled something in yourself, but never with the idea of sort of attempting to break new ground. I think, you know, if you set out that way, I mean, if you're a scientist and you're looking for a discovery or in a research, that way there's a whole other thing. But in our biz, certainly not. I think, you know, it would kill it from the word go.
I started writing in radio. The first people I wrote for were Archie Andrews and that lovable little wooden rascal Peter Brough. Peter was always in the clothing business. Sometimes I got paid in money, sometimes in overcoats. I was the worst paid, best dressed writer in the business. But I learned a lot. Working in radio forces you to use your imagination. I mean, anything is possible. Even that half a hundredweight of wood and plastic is a real live boy.
When I was writing for Archie, he was real to me because one had to start to think of him as if he were a 11 or 12-year-old boy, you know. There were certain things that he could do, couldn't do, was too young to do. And I really began to believe in him. I remember once when we were doing the television show, I came into a rehearsal room and there was nobody in the rehearsal room except Archie Andrews, all by himself, sitting on the sofa, and Irene Handel, and she was chatting to him.
No.
Yes, she was chatting away to him. You're a lovely little boy, she was saying. So he was real to her too. How real is Archie to you?
Believe this. Well, he is to me. I mean, when you and I are talking like this, he'd be very hurt to think that I was talking about him as a dummy, maybe. But when you're working, he actually lived. And he even had a letter from the Inland Revenue once to assess him for income tax.
But seriously, you believe he has a separate identity?
Of course. Yeah. And this is built up mentally. I mean, any ventriloquist will tell you this. Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy, they're all the same. But when you met him, when you talk to him, when you are working, I don't feel, when I'm on the stage in front of an audience, that I do the work or the talking. And when I come off, I can't believe I've done it.
So you really believe he exists independently?
Yes, of course.
Can we talk
and he'd be
to
very
him?
He'd be very hurt if he heard you saying anything of the kind.
Can we talk to him?
Yes, of course. Archie, come and have a chat with Hello, Mr. Feldman. Well, how are you? How nice to see you.
Oh, my God.
Well, it's a long time, isn't it, eh?
I was asking Peter before if he thought you really existed. He said yes. Do you think he really exists?
He exists?
Yes.
Well, I think he does, but I don't exactly know how. You know, there's not much of life in there sometimes. You just behave yourself. All right, I'm just enjoying myself. Go on, go away. All right. Well, now, Marty, it's very, very nice to see you down here. And I do hope that you'll ask me up to come and see one of your shows one of these times.
Yeah, I would love to make.
Because you made such a wonderful success, and I'm very proud of you.
Well, you were the first person I ever wrote the comedy scripts for, you know.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I still tell everybody that you used to write them. My goodness me, we had a lot of fun, didn't we? Eh? There's no business like show business, Martin. You stick at it, old boy, and I think you'll do well.
Thank you, mate.
I do really.
For these cozy virtuosi.
Comedy, like sex, is best performed in collaboration with somebody else. One of the greatest comedy teams for me is Morecambe and Wise.
Precisely how jazz music is made.
Are you all right? Because you got a funny colour then. You went a funny colour. What happened? Ha! Well, I'm the only one that's arrived. I came by tube, you know. Tube and yacht. It's difficult. I'm Bing... I'm Bing Crosby. Oh, no, Oh, no. I'm sorry. You see, because with Bing Crosby, you can't see the join. With you, every now and again, a quick flash. Oh, please, just a quick flash. That's all, folks. If I was by myself, I feel, honestly, I would, you know, I'd be like this. I'd be a nervous wreck. Because I'd be looking for something to bounce off.
Yeah, well, don't you notice that solo performers do this? They create, not straight men, since there only isn't a straight man, but
they create partners.
They create partners.
Oh,
Frankie
yes.
Howard talks about the gaffer.
Sure, yes.
Kenneth Williams talks about the scriptwriter.
Yes, that's right.
And the stand-up comics always they work off a part.
And a lot of stand-up comics, especially of the musical type that did the transition onto television successfully, usually ended up with some form of partner.
Yeah.
Or basically, the word is stooge.
Yeah. But it was just something to work.
It was
something
there
to work
all
off.
the time. The man to hit.
Yeah.
You know, or the man to bounce off. Yeah. That's true. Totally true. That.
But it's a different thing with you and Ernie because it goes, in fact, both ways, which is the difference.
Well, we've now both become personalities.
Yeah.
But I mean, a few years ago, say about 9 or 10 years ago, we were just gag men. He was a straight man.
Yeah.
And he fed me, and I did the comic line, you know, and that was it then.
Did you ever work separately before you worked together?
Only before we met, as juveniles.
Yeah.
I started out in about 1937 with, it's true, with on clubs, working men's clubs up north in Lancaster and Morecambe.
But I remember playing up north, all these stagehands used to try to terrify you. Everywhere you'd go, they'd say, if you can please him here, you can please him
You go well here, you go well
there,
anywhere, yes.
Oh, they're hard lot, hardest lot in England.
I'm not standing up for Gracie Fields, I'm not standing up for you. Yeah, it's true, that. But Glasgow was definitely the comics graveyard. Oh, I used to be ill when the telegram came in, go to Glasgow. And we did well there. We always did well there. Walked off to our own footsteps, but we always did well. You know, the fireman once said, they're getting to like you here. And we died, they're getting to like you. I said, what do you mean? He said, they never shouted. It's true.
Except for American comics, who used to go great.
American and coloured.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to go on with black makeup on and a kilt and talk with an American accent. It's the only way you could get away with it.
This is Golden Square, in the heart of London's glittering West End. When I started working in radio, I started working for Peter Brough and Archie Andrews, and I used to write in that office over there, on the 3rd floor. After about 3 years of working for Peter Brough, I got an offer to go into television and write Bootsy and Snudge with Barry Took. Over there at Granada. It took me 3 bloody years to get from that side of the square to that side of the square.
Most of my writing has been done with Barry. It's an equal partnership in every sense.
People say, who writes what? Do you do the jokes and does Barry do the story, or do you do the story and does Barry do the jokes? And it's difficult to explain to people that neither of us has a separate function, that when we write together we sort of fuse and become an entity.
We have a great understanding of each other's staying power.
Yeah.
And when one is having a bad day, the other will pick up and take over. It's like a sort of a relay race.
Everybody's stronger in some areas than they are in others. I know, for instance, your great strength has always been sort of an architectural strength, if you know what I mean. You have the best sense of the overall shape of something than I do. And I very often act as an interior decorator, and you act as the architect of a script.
Yeah,
you know
but
what I mean?
I would do this, but put it on emotional terms, I would think that I would trust your instincts.
Yeah.
I mean, to say no is as constructive as saying yes in certain circumstances.
Sure.
You are much more able to say no, we can't do this. I can remember once we got to the end, 2 pages from the end of a script, and you said, I don't like it. I don't like it.
And you went I remember you went all grim, and you went, right,
Right, well, what do we do then instead? There's no sort of argument, because in the long run one feels irritated at the waste of time, maybe the 4 days it had taken us to write that, but I knew bloody well that you had arrived at this conclusion that it wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
And I would go along with that.
But it was purely instinctive. I couldn't have told you why then.
No,
I didn't know.
I didn't even stop to question your reasoning. This is the curious thing.
I find that there are two kinds of comedy writers on the whole. There's the writers who work in pairs. I'm one of that kind. And there's the solitary writer, the writer who writes alone. Now, he doesn't really write alone. What he does is he collaborates. But instead of collaborating with one other person, he collaborates with the world. But every time you meet him in a bar, he's buttonholing you and he's telling you what his latest script is like. He's trying to get a reaction from you. This is, in a way, because writing alone is a very sort of... Writing comedy alone is a very solitary business. Until there is a laugh, a joke isn't complete, the circuit isn't complete. Therefore, you have to provide an audience for him to complete the circuit. When you write in pairs, like Barry and I do, we provide an audience for each other, a balance for each other, critic for each other. It's very much, in a way, like a marriage. You can't advertise for a writing partner. You couldn't just find one. You just have to meet one. It's odd, really, because you spend more time with your writing partner than you do with your wife. In a way, it's kind of like a marriage. There are all kinds of hang-ups, too, that you have to know each other very well, because, like, if I throw out an idea, I must know the guy pretty well, otherwise I would be embarrassed to throw out a bad idea. But the bad idea has to come first, in order that it may be improved. That I may say, let's do this. And he says, no, not this, but that. And I say, not this or that, but maybe in between. And that's how we find a level. Now, it's embarrassing to tell your bad ideas to a stranger. It's like taking all your clothes off in front of somebody you don't know. When you know your writing partner well, you're past this stage of embarrassment, and you don't mind seeing each other, as it were, sort of mentally naked. This is why writing marriages are very difficult to achieve, and when you do achieve them, they tend to last a long while. One of the greatest writing partnerships was Frank Muir and Dennis Norden. Dennis Norden is still a kind of guru of comedy.
You start, and you're two different people. You both got attitudes, and you put the two attitudes together, and they, like, multiply each other.
Yeah.
Then you stay with people, and you grow more like him, he grows more like you, and you somehow, instead of being multiplied, you're divided by each other, you know.
But then it must become very strange that, I mean, after, 14 years with Frank?
It was more, it was 17, I think it was,
years with Frank.
yeah.
You divorced him?
It is very much like a divorce in that people come up to you and say, I hear you left, you know, Frank, you know, as though to say, I suppose you're cooking all your meals, or you have to eat out in restaurants, you know, that kind of feeling.
It seems very logical that the writer should also be the performer. It completes the process. I mean, I don't think of writing and acting as separate functions. Inventing the script is the part that most interests me. Performing is a catharsis, a kind of orgasm. Consequently, when I've finished a show, it's over. Dead. When I watch myself on the screen, it's in a curious sort of detached way, as if it were somebody else. I don't find myself funny, but I'm sometimes interested in, and I'm often surprised that I did a particular thing in a particular way. It came as a surprise to me that I didn't really learn anything by watching myself.
Mandeville, you came.
Of course.
That's right.
She thinks I'm putting the cat out.
Working intuitively, as I need to, most of the time I'm not really conscious of what I'm doing while I'm doing it. And by the time I see a show on the screen, it's irrelevant, because I'm involved in the next thing. Comedy is only an attitude to life. I don't separate it from other things I do. It's a way of looking at things. The human condition is either a pathetic one or it's absurd. From where I stand, it's absurd. Now that I appear on television, life has changed, but only superficially. I still do the things I want to, but it's difficult to do them in privacy now. See, everything takes on the nature of a performance. When you work in television, you become, in a sense, public property. You come into people's homes, they feel they know you. In a way, I suppose they do. And so I don't feel I have any right to resent the familiarity. After all, you don't have to be a comedian. Nobody twists your arm. I do it because I want to. Television is a nice place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live there. Neither the budget nor the time available seems to me enough to do things the way I'd like to do them.
Looked a bloody mess to me, that. Absolute move.
It was very untidy coming
Looked a terrible mess to me.
I don't ever expect to realise 100% of my intentions in any piece of work. But in television, I've learned that you have to settle for a lot less, about 60% at best.
151, take one. Take the key.
Goal! Talking about! Score the goal! It's the ball!
I've never been really satisfied with anything I've done, and I hope I never am. But I think I'll get nearer to what I want, making films for the cinema.
The most difficult thing going from television to films is getting your mind wrenched out of the half-hour time slot. I couldn't see how anything could last longer than a half an hour, you know, how any idea. And also, you find that, you know, like in television, if somebody comes into a room, you're writing a scene where somebody comes into a room, you know, that was, you get onto the meat and potatoes of the subject as quickly as possible, whereas in a longer thing, somebody comes into a room, you say, hello, how do you do? Have you met so-and-so? No, how do you do? Would you like something to drink? Yes, I'll have a Scotch. Scotch, I'm afraid we haven't got any Scotch. And you look at it, and that's a page, you see, and nothing. You see, but that's where your magic director comes in, who's doing wonderful visual compositions and pace, and, you know, which maybe he's doing.
Don't you think they go on slightly too much about films being a visual medium? I mean, the things that one remembers a hell of a lot about films are verbal jokes.
Well, yeah, maybe I remember them, you remember them, we remember them. I you know, have a long way to go in this respect. I think anybody who started in radio is verbally hooked, always. Yeah. And I know that I write much too much dialogue, and you see, you know, the really good film writers. You see, you know, just the look of the page, you can see their short sentences and, you know, that whole wodge where there's no dialogue at all. Well, I haven't got that far yet, and I still find it terribly difficult not to believe that the funniest things are verbal.
When you get onto a feature film set, you really notice the difference from television. Hundreds of technicians running about, thousands of pounds worth of machinery.
Let's lose that just now and use the dry ice.
In TV, the artist is the prime mover in the piece. In films, it seems is almost an intrusion. It's a director's medium, but since I want to make films, I just have to live with it. I think one of the reasons that British comics traditionally fail in the cinema is they don't understand the mechanics of filmmaking, and given an unsympathetic director, they're absolutely lost. The ones who do succeed have taken the trouble to learn the technique.
The equipment was incredible, absolutely incredible. And so they didn't have any of these new little Italian dollies or whatnot with tiny tracks going through doorways. They had these huge things that people, you know, dressing them and all these guys were. And, you know, you used to have to try and do shots getting out of cars doing this. And instead of, you know, putting it on a crab dolly and zooming back, like, it's common practice now, and we were setting for hours, I mean, waiting. And I said, why don't you fellas, so the lighting cameraman was very bright, he said, don't ask me, it's nothing to do with me, you know. Anyway, go and see Alice V. Tucker's, folks, it's, you'll never notice it on the film.
It's very easy for the artist to get lost in films.
Do you miss an audience when you're working in films?
No, no. I miss an audience. I mean, it's nice to get in front of an audience again. But I don't miss them in movies, no. When I was doing a film in America, one I had a very serious illness on, actually. There were people used to come around the set, invited people.
Yeah.
But they were sort of onlookers, and they were prying, you know, and picking their noses and licking ice cream, and that used to bug me.
Yeah.
They weren't like an audience, so I prefer a closed set.
Yeah, rather than a
Yeah,
sort of...
and make my own audience, you know what I mean, in my mind.
We are basically spontaneity. We have a spontaneity, Ernie and I, that is not allowed to come over in film.
Because of the machinery of films.
Yes, and also because it's... I couldn't, for argument's sake, move over there if you felt like it.
Yeah.
You know, you can't walk off the set, obviously.
Yeah.
And you've got to go to marks and finish on such and such a line, and you do it 6 or 8 times, you know.
But don't you think it's possible to make films like this if you cut the size of the unit down and work with handheld cameras and all that?
Well, I suppose so. I must be honest, I don't know. But what I feel that they go wrong with a lot of comedy in films is they don't allow you to work long enough. It's a minute bit.
Yeah.
Instead of, say, a well-rehearsed 7-minute bit, which they then can cut up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And also, I think they've got too many close-ups. It's all this all the time, you know. You do the gag, then they get a close-up.
You mean, in other words, that you're sort of in the way that they're making the films, using you.
You're in the way of them, yes, exactly, yes.
But Buster Keaton maintained that his films were ruined when he went to MGM because they saddled him with a load of writers, executives.
That's right.
Lots of other people. And they used to let him just go off and make the films he wanted to make, and they worked.
The biggest examples of that was W.C. Fields.
Yeah.
I mean, you never saw him in a close-up.
No.
He was always either 3/4 or full length.
Yeah.
And you've got the funny... He's a funny man, you know.
But Fields was in control of Fields' films. This is what I mean, in a way. Don't you think the only way it can work for a comic is for the comic to have artistic control over what he's doing?
Well, yes, I agree with that to a point, but I must be honest, I don't think I could direct a film.
I was working on a television thing once, a comedy thing, and the director was saying to an actor, apart from Peter and myself, you know, do this, do that. And I knew... Actually, I felt very strongly that this wasn't going to pull off the point that we wanted to make. And I said, look, I don't want to interfere, but, or rather I do want to interfere, but that doesn't seem to me as if that's going to make the point. And he said, no, you know, I'm directing this. Fair enough. And then I sort of let my anxiety about it say it again, you know, and I said, you know, I really feel that that's just not going to work. And of course, it created a great deal of rage and frustration in me and a lot of ill feeling, I think, between us. But it's that sort of situation I want to avoid. I want to, you know, do a film where, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but where I can set it up, you know, shot by shot. I'd like to sort of map out each shot and do it that way. I think that's what I want, that control.
Someday I'd like to direct my own films, but that's a long way off yet. I've got a hell of a lot to learn first. My wife, Loretta, and I bought a house now. The first time we've ever really owned anything. In the past, possessions have always frightened me because they end up by owning you. Maybe that's what happens when you get older, though. You want something more permanent.
But Ted says we can paint over that.
There's a lot of things I'd like to do, but I don't make plans. I prefer to let things just happen. What I do will be the inevitable result of what I have done. I'm already starting work on my first film, as a writer and performer. I've no idea where it'll lead, and I don't really care. I'm doing what I want to do, and that's enough.